If you've ever left a meeting wondering, how did we spend an hour on that? Congratulations, you've experienced one of the most common and most invisible ways teams waste their time, and we even have a name for it. So stick around and we'll unpack what it is, why it happens, and what your team can do to avoid it. What's up, UX fam? Welcome to another edition of the Cognition Catalog, where every week or so we'll dig into a new cognitive bias and explore how that bias can impact how our team works together and what we can do to ensure we don't get caught up in the pitfalls. Because working with people is hard, and the more insights we have into the human condition make it just a little bit easier. To learn more about the Bikeshedding Effect, you can find more resources at cognitioncatalog.com and click a little bell down there so you get notified when a new episode drops so you never have to worry about falling for any of these cognitive biases again. And shout out to this week's sponsor, Mobbin. If you're tired of staring at a blank Figma canvas, Mobbin gives you access to over 400,000 beautifully designed UI screens and user flows with a library that grows bigger every week. Kickstart your creativity, streamline your workflow, and level up your design process. Visit mobbin.com/beyondux to get 20% off Mobbin Pro and never run out of inspiration again. And as always, thanks so much to Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, Marty, Tino, Adina, and Zoe for all their support. When I first read about the Bike-Shedding Effect, also known as the Law of Triviality, I immediately started with the flashbacks. I'm talking full cinematic PTSD, fluorescent-lit conference rooms, endless Teams meetings, someone sharing their screen with a 17-tab Excel spreadsheet, and all of us just arguing about the pettiest things imaginable. Now, I've talked a lot about my experience working on large software teams in the past, and not surprisingly, this effect was something that we ran into time and time again. It showed up everywhere. I think about the days of my life spent locked in debate over tabs versus spaces when formatting code, or whether the definition of ready should really have that fifth bullet point or not, or the precise wording of our definition of done as if the fate of the product depended on it. Meanwhile, the really meaty problems, the ones that would actually determine our success, they just sat there completely untouched and ignored. Now, what if we had used that time to figure out how 80 engineers spread across 7 pods and 2 continents could actually collaborate and share knowledge and avoid building the same thing twice? What if we spent our time worrying about how to influence those distant, busy executives who saw product delivery in a completely different way than the people actually building it? I can't help but think that we'd have made way more progress if we had the courage and the structure to tackle those bigger conversations instead of hiding in the easy ones. But hey, I'm just a podcaster. What do I know? Now, you've probably been there too, stuck in a meeting, watching the clock, realizing that the decision on the table is barely worth the pixels on the slide deck, while the important stuff quietly collects dust. Well, I can't give you all that time back, but now you have a name for it, and maybe I can help you avoid it in the future. So what exactly is the bike-shedding effect? Let's get into it. We tend to focus disproportionate time and energy on trivial or minor details while neglecting the really important things. This cognitive bias often manifests itself in group decision-making processes where participants tend to give more attention to easy-to-understand and easy-to-discuss issues rather than more complex and critical problems. The phrase bike shedding comes from a British author and naval historian. His name was C. Northcote Parkinson. This very British-sounding name. In 1957, he wrote a satire on bureaucratic inefficiency. And in his book, he imagined a committee that was working to approve a nuclear power plant design. And faced with really complex reactor specifications, the members stayed completely silent. But when the conversation shifted to the design of the plant's bike shed, where everybody would store their bikes, suddenly everybody had strong opinions. So the simpler the topic, the easier it was to contribute, so it got all the attention. The observation became known as Parkinson's Law of Triviality. Groups tend to spend more time on decisions that are easy to understand rather than those with the highest stakes. The bias thrives in group settings because weighing in on simple issues carries a low risk of embarrassment or being wrong, while the complex decisions can feel intimidating or politically sensitive, so people stay away from them. His insights weren't based on a single observation alone, so that story never actually happened, but it was based on his own experience with bureaucracies and committees over the course of his career. He noticed that this pattern repeated itself all the time in different organizations that he was a part of, which led him to formulate that principle. Now, interestingly, the bike shedding effect is just one of several observations Parkinson made about organizational behavior, and maybe his most famous is Parkinson's Law, which states work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. So give someone 2 weeks to do some work. They'll do that work in 2 weeks. You give them 4 weeks for the exact same amount of work. Guess what? It's going to take them 4 weeks. Now, today, bike shedding can show up all the time. Things like agile ceremonies, design reviews, steering committees, even executive offsites. It's not laziness. It's a very human pull towards clarity and away from discomfort. Now, unfortunately, that comfort comes at the cost of real progress. On software teams, the bike shedding effect can have a huge impact on productivity and decision making. Bike shedding can look like a design critique where 20 minutes are spent debating button alignment, leaving no time for a thorny discussion about whether the feature actually addresses core user needs in the first place. Everybody leaves feeling like they made some progress, but the critical strategic decisions remain untouched. Engineers, it might be code reviews that spiral into naming debates or fights over tabs versus spaces, while important architectural risks go completely unmentioned until they become expensive problems later. In leadership meetings, it might be rehashing the color palette for a marketing campaign because nobody wants to tackle the harder, more politically fraught question of whether to cut that failing product line at all in the first place. Now, the danger isn't just wasted time. It's a slow cultural drift. If a team repeatedly avoids the hard conversations, people start to believe that avoidance is the norm, and important decisions get deferred until a crisis forces them to deal with it. Talented people might disengage completely because the work feels performative instead of impactful, and over time, the team's problem-solving muscle starts to weaken, and it makes high-stake decisions even harder to face later. Well, what can you and your team do about it? Well, here are a few things you can try. First, prioritize issues by their impact rather than their simplicity. Try to develop a system to rank discussion topics or tasks according to their potential influence on the overall goals. This approach can help ensure that the most critical matters are given sufficient attention regardless of their complexity. Next, use agendas that highlight decisions' impact. It's really easy to get sidetracked, so make a list of important topics before meetings and put the critical items first. When you make the agenda, label the items with their potential business or project impact. This can create a visual reminder of which topics truly deserve more time and focus. And obviously, share the agenda beforehand, use it to guide discussions, and then time box those discussions. And even if you don't have trouble with bike shedding, for the love of God, make an agenda for your meetings. Next, use time boxing for meetings. Set a firm limit for discussion on minor topics. Once that time is up, it's up. Either make a quick decision or delegate the decision to a smaller group so that the rest of the meeting can move forward. If you can, try to use outside facilitators for important discussions. When you're deeply involved, it's really easy to miss the forest for the trees. So outside facilitators with a fresh perspective can see conversations going sideways maybe before you can. And they can keep that meeting on track, they can prevent focus on the small details, and they can encourage thinking about the bigger picture. And then lastly, break down complex issues into approachable parts. One of the reasons teams avoid big topics is that they feel overwhelming. So by splitting up complex decisions into smaller, more digestible components, you make it easier for people to engage and reduce that pull towards trivial matters. Well, all right, y'all, that's it for the Cognition Catalog for today. I hope I helped to shed a little bit of light on what bike shedding is and how we can avoid some of those pitfalls at work. But I'm curious, have you counted all the hours and days that you've wasted in meetings talking about completely nothing? Or are you scared to count? I kind of am too. I don't want to know. But I would love to hear about it. Let me know what you think on LinkedIn or shoot me an email at hello@beyonduxdesign.com. I'd love to hear from you. To learn more about the bike shedding effect, you can find more resources at cognitioncatalog.com and click the little bell down there so you get notified when a new episode drops so you never have to worry about falling for any of these biases again. And if you want to pick up some big, beautiful art prints of some select biases, make sure to check out beyonduxdesign.com/shop. Get free shipping on all orders over $30 and use the promo code YouTube to get 10% off your entire order. And if you have a favorite bias that you want to see in print, let me know. I'd be happy to take requests. And one more time, if you're tired of staring at a blank Figma canvas, Mobbin gives you access to over 400,000 beautifully designed UI screens and user flows with a library that grows bigger every week. Kickstart your creativity, streamline your workflow, and level up your design process. Visit mobbin.com/beyondux to get 20% off Mobbin Pro and never run out of inspiration again. Help keep the show independent and ad-free. Check out beyonduxdesign.com/support to find out how. You can join Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, Marty, Tino, Adina, and Zoe, and many others, and help keep the show independent and ad-free. You'll get exclusive access to the entire video library of episodes, including episodes before they're even released. Get instant access to those videos right now for as little as $5 a month. And until next time, remember, you're more than a designer because there's more to UX and design. I'll see you around. Take care, y'all.